Have you ever wondered what happens in the hours when the world sleeps? When the city falls silent and only a few remain awake to guard what others can't even imagine might be threatened. Private security guards, those who spend entire nights alone, are witnesses to a type of reality that never appears in newspapers yet scars their lives forever. Picture this: an empty building, an abandoned warehouse, a cemetery, or even a decommissioned hospital. Places filled with too much silence. A silence that isn't empty, but saturated with memories, echoes, presences. It's within this psychological territory that the deepest fear is born, because it's not only about what lies outside, criminals, intruders, tangible risks, but about what awakens inside the mind, when it's left alone with its own ghosts. Psychology explains that the human mind, when in a constant state of alertness, amplifies sounds, shadows, and even thoughts. It's as if perception itself becomes a distorted lens. A simple creak can sound like a threat. A motionless shadow seems to move. The night guard gradually transforms into someone who no longer distinguishes between what is real and what is the product of fear. Yet, there are moments when these reports surpass the barrier of psychological suggestion. There are occurrences that challenge not only the mind but logic itself. Tonight, you will hear true and disturbing stories of private security guards, accounts that reveal how the loneliest job in the world can also become the most terrifying. Prepare yourself, because each case you're about to hear is not just a tale of fear, it's a plunge into the psychological collapse of those who came face to face with the unexplainable. The first case happened in a decommissioned hospital. The guard assigned to the night shift was a skeptic, someone who mocked ghost stories. To him, fear was nothing but weakness. Yet in his second week on the job, something shattered his confidence. Around 3 a.m, he heard hurried footsteps echoing through one of the corridors. Thinking it was intruders, he rushed toward the sound, but the faster he moved, the further the footsteps seemed. When he finally reached the end of the corridor, he found a surgery room door slightly ajar. He pushed it open forcefully, and what he saw was deeply unsettling. Rusted instruments, overturned gurneys, dust everywhere, and a chair rocking back and forth on its own, as if someone had just stood up. The man described an intense cold, not from the environment but from within his own body, as if something inside him had understood what his mind could not. Days later, he discovered that the room was infamous as the corridor of the dead, where countless patients had died during failed surgeries. Psychology calls this type of experience a perceptual collapse, when external stimuli trigger subconscious fears or memories. The problem is that in this case there was no stimulus to explain what he had witnessed. The chair really was moving. The footsteps really had echoed, and it was this that shattered his sanity. The guard quit days later and never again accepted work in enclosed spaces. Another account comes from a cemetery. The night watchman often described the sensation of being followed. At first he dismissed it as solitude playing tricks on his mind, but one night while walking down an alley between graves he heard the distinct cry of a child. The sound was too real to ignore. He followed it, imagining that perhaps someone had wandered in by mistake. But when he reached the place where the crying came from, it stopped abruptly. Silence was replaced by something worse, the sensation of dozens of invisible eyes watching him. He tried to run, but his legs would not obey. He remained frozen for what felt like endless seconds before finally breaking free. Days later, he discovered that other guards had also heard the same crying child, always in the same area, and all knew the story of a child buried under mysterious circumstances at that very spot. The most frightening part, however, came afterward. The guard began to suffer from frequent sleep paralysis, always accompanied by the vision of a shadowy child at the foot of his bed. The mind, when confronted with traumatic experiences, builds defense mechanisms, but in this case, defense turned into torture. What he experienced in the cemetery did not remain there. It followed him home, as though his mind had been permanently marked. Not all terrifying encounters take place in abandoned ruins. A modern, brightly lit shopping mall became the setting for another nightmare. One security guard reported that, during a routine check after closing, he noticed mannequins scattered across the floor of a store. Nothing unusual at first, but as he began picking them up, he realized one of them seemed to be staring at him. He swore its eyes blinked. The situation escalated when he reviewed the surveillance footage. Frame by frame, he could clearly see a mannequin shifting positions on its own. He quit on the spot, refusing to ever set foot in the mall again. This phenomenon connects to what psychology calls the uncanny valley. Objects that imitate human features like dolls or mannequins trigger discomfort because they are almost alive, but not quite. This discomfort skyrockets when these objects, which should be inert, display movement. The brain does not know how to react. It cannot classify the scene as possible, and the result is pure panic. For the guard, the impact was devastating. He developed severe anxiety disorder and required treatment. The fragile line between reality and illusion had been broken, and his mind could no longer repair itself. In a logistics warehouse, another guard experienced something even more disturbing. He began noticing boxes mysteriously moved during his rounds. On the cameras, only vague, shifting shadows were captured. One night, he decided to confront the phenomenon head-on. He turned off the lights and waited. Minutes later, he saw with his own eyes a shadow pass through a wall and shove a box across the floor. He described it as a humanoid shape, but without a face. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Fear had paralyzed his body. After the incident, the guard developed severe symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, insomnia, panic attacks, recurring hallucinations. He claimed the shadow didn't remain in the warehouse. It followed him home. It was as if he had carried something out with him, something that refused to let go. This is perhaps the most chilling aspect of these accounts. The trauma doesn't end when the shift is over. The brain carries fear as a scar. For some, the experience never fades. It transforms into an invisible companion that lingers, waiting. These true stories prove that the work of a private security guard goes far beyond surveillance. It is also a constant confrontation with the fragile limits of the human mind. Alone, exposed to silence and the unknown, these professionals don't just face thieves or intruders. They face something that challenges their very sanity. The most terrifying element isn't just what they saw, but what it did to them. Disorders, nightmares, persistent fear. Science tries to explain it away as projections of the mind, emotional residues, or a brain's reaction to hypervigilance. But for those who lived through it, there is no explanation that suffices. The experience is real, the fear is real, and the scars are permanent. Perhaps the deepest reflection lies here. The true horror doesn't rest only in the supernatural, but in the fragility of the human mind when confronted with the unexplainable. When reason collapses, only pure fear remains, fear that corrodes from within and never leaves. So the next time you hear a noise in the darkness, remember these stories. Because for many security guards, the night shift isn't just a job, it's a plunge into nightmares that never end. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, activate the notification bell to be alerted about our future posts. See you in the next video.